Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Now we begin the discussion of what we heard from our beloved Rabbi. I just wanted to start with something because we had our Torah study on Wednesday night, and I finished at Leviticus 26. I didn't read 27, and Jerry sent me an email this morning. Actually, he called me yesterday, and he wrote something about that he didn't speak about on Wednesday, maybe because I was feeling tired and a little bit heavy after reading that, even though the last verse does say how much he loves us and he will never leave us or forsake us. But this is what Jerry wrote. I just wanted to read it to you. He went, "Wow, after reading chapter 26, it can feel a bit heavy, right? But chapter 27 shifts the tone. It's like God saying, hey, even after all that, you still have value to me." It talks about people dedicating themselves and their things to God, and how he actually sets up a system to show that they're worth something. It's kind of beautiful, like a reminder that no matter where we've been, we still matter and can come close to him. Leviticus 26 delivers a powerful and at times daunting message, outlining blessings for obedience and consequences for disobedience. Yet, chapter 27 follows not with judgment, but with value. It provides a framework for how individuals may dedicate themselves or their possessions to the Lord, a striking reminder that God continues to see inherent worth in his people. This concluding chapter encourages a renewed perspective. Devotion and consecration are always within reach. So, as chapter 26 closes with a solemn warning, chapter 27 opens a quieter but equally profound door, a door of worth, intention, and hope. Here, God shows that even in a system built on law and order, law, Torah, and consequence, there is room for personal devotion. The message is clear, but it's gentle but clear. You are still valuable to me. It's a call to remember our worth in God's eyes and to respond with willing hearts, knowing that our dedication matters to him. That's beautiful, Jerry. Thank you for that message. It really, Leviticus, even though it's always hard to begin, is a very powerful book. So, I wrote a bunch of notes here on about what Rabbi was saying, but I'd like to hear from some of you before I interject. Miriam, Mauricio.
Well, one of the things about the whole idea of harvest and the rest and etc. Everything is about harvest is to be followed by rest, and we keep the Shabbat for the rest. Everything has to do with a kind of rhythm and a kind of balance between, even in our own lives, there are people workaholics who don't have that balance, and the opposite is a kind of laissez-faire attitude where people don't do enough. But what did I write down here? Okay. Well, when the rabbi said God does not punish us, but we reap the harvest of our own doings. So that's how you could apply even the idea of harvest into our own lives. Like, sometimes speaking to my
we reap what we sow.
Yeah. I speaking to my friend who lives in the building, and she gets very, very angry and because of what's happening in Israel, blah, blah, blah. And I understand why she's getting angry. But when I talk about God, sometimes she goes, where is he now? Where is he? Da, 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 da. Anyway, but, yeah, and I understand that. But we do reap what we sow. And sometimes even in our own lives, we say, why am I going through so much? And then we see sometimes when we come through that, why we had to, and I see that in my life, even in little ways, that sometimes there's not, okay, Rabbi Percy was talking about blind obedience. God does not want blind obedience, but sometimes certain things I know in my life I may do that are obedient, that I'm not feeling, the word feeling, I'm not necessarily feeling the things that I want to feel, but something sort of hit me. But there's certain things that are not blind, but we know in our heart we want to do. We want to follow God. We want to keep his commandments. Like, and sometimes we have to say, okay, the feelings will not always be there, but just keep, you have to do these things. And then I find the feeling does come when obedience, when you really are obedient, the feelings will come. It's like a flower. You have to plant the flower, and the roots grow first. You know what I mean? The roots grow first, and then out comes the flower. So it's not, you can't say that we're holistic beings. They're feelings and obedience. It's all a whole. And the feelings will come, but we're not perfect as human beings, so we're a little disjointed. So things are not always, you know, we're anyway. That's some of the things. What else did I read?
Just on that note, before you continue, that's the whole idea of the hukim in my
About
understanding.
what? Sorry.
That's you can't hear me?
No, I heard you. What was the last word?
That's the idea of the hukim.
Oh yeah, right.
The hukim, which are the middle two commandments, God is not telling us to do them if we feel them. He's not saying keep the Shabbat if you feel like it, or honor your feel like it, because we don't understand the consequences of not keeping Shabbat, or fully understand the consequences of not honoring our parents. I mean, on a rational level, we can understand. If we don't rest on one day, we're going to be exhausted. We can be sick. God is saying, listen, you're not slaves anymore. I set you free. I am the only God. Trust me. I'm telling you, you're going to be glad that you did that. In honoring our parents, I see so many kids and grandkids today who don't, who don't even, they may be talking to their children, and the grandparent would like to say hello. Oh, they're too tired. They're too busy. They have no time to even come out of, and just honor
Yeah,
grandparents. That's the society we're living in now.
yeah.
He
But
did
about the Shabbat, I don't think well, partly it's about exhaustion or whatever, but a lot of people they'll take that, let's say their work allows them, they're working in the restaurant business and they get the Tuesday off. That's their day of rest. So I think a day of rest, it's more than physical, because, for some people, Shabbat is busier than other days. There's a lot to do. So I think I always say this, but because the way it hit me, it really is a day, a special day. It is a special day because God created the earth. It's a sign.
right.
He says it's a sign, and
Existence, exactly.
yeah, of his creation, etc. Anyway, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. The principle seems to be in all things trust.
yeah,
If we trust him, we'll keep the Shabbat. If we trust him, we'll leave the land alone in the seventh year, because we had to sow it, we had to reap it. Imagine, Mauricio, in your business, if you told the company, you have to leave the land alone in the seventh year. Let the people who are poor come and take all the sugar they want. Let them take the sugar cane. And then we'll plant in the eighth year and we'll reap in the ninth. I mean, that's a hard thing to do. It
Yeah.
takes
Yeah, this portion is always we were resuming this Tuesday about this book, and it's interesting that God wants that our behavior be different in different areas of our lives. Okay, starting by, well, how how to be presentable before Him, to acknowledge who is God, then understanding that it's not our feelings, is His commandments. Okay, but and then start to speak, for example, how to dress, how to eat, how to behave with persons elders than us, or persons who are our kids, persons who are families, our workers, our co-workers, etc. And it's interesting that at the end, start to talk about the financial uh, holiness, okay? Because uh, this is the whole idea about this portion, right? That God is like saying, okay, you want to uh, you want to be holy, okay? You want to say I am completely different, okay? That's okay. Okay, let's try. Okay, what about the money? It's like God saying us. Okay, and you know uh, this is sometimes hard, honestly, to and it's not about faith. I would say it's sometimes that is fear, is more fear, because um, um, that God is like, okay, I will provide you. You have to reap not only the 7 day, the 7 year, okay? Because according to what is written, we're 3 years more or less uh, that we don't have to work on the land, okay? So imagine how can you survive if you are a farmer, for example. Eh, so uh,
Well, if you
and that's
trust in the Torah, it says, I will provide enough for you in the 6th year that you will have enough for the next 3 years.
yes, but even today, for example, imagine that God tells you, okay, you have kids, you have family, and you have everybody at home, and you have loans, you have debts, whatever, and then God tells you, okay, you will rest on the 7th year, and you will not work. It's the very same idea,
Yeah.
okay?
Year
Eh,
or
eh,
7th day?
the 7th day, the 7th month, I'm sorry, a 7th year, 7 year.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. So honestly, for a person that his work is to farm, is hard. Probably if I I'm not pretty sure, but I can tell you that doesn't apply, for example, to person who were business, banking, or I don't know, another kind of economic um, economic uh, work. Okay, for example, if it's just for the farmers, but probably yes, they can do whatever else and import some goods, whatever.
Well,
But
but
God,
they were told to prepare
yes,
yourself. Like
yeah,
Joseph,
to prepare.
for the 7 years of famine, he prepared. He put things in the, he didn't have to leave everything to God. We had to do our part.
Yes. And but at that time you don't have the capacity of storage. Okay. So that is something that probably can change. I mean, yes, all the crops go to a storage, but even today, for example, in sugar industry, we cannot storage for more than 2 years or 3 years the crop, because it's not fresh. Okay, it's the same with the corn. It's the same with the wheat. Another, but you know, when you start to read, and as you mentioned, I am part of be a farmer, I would say. Okay, so it's a high, very high hukim, which is written here. Okay, because it's your it is how you survive. Okay, and honestly, it just to get, you know, to go into no, a dark hole and start to walk inside saying God is guarding me, God is keeping me safe. But honestly, it's a very, very hard uh, commandment. Okay. And that's probably why people did not, because we don't see that this commandment or this hukim were respected by the but all the ancient people in Israel. Is the only one. Yeah, they can keep the commandments, for example, to do not eat, for example, I don't know, shrimps or whatever, or pork, or to dress, for example, properly, or to do not have sexual attractions with men, or men and men, or woman, things like that. But the Shemitah is something that was very hard for them, because that was his life. Okay, it's a completely life. And yes, then the all the wise of Israel start to say, oh, that's why we went to Babylon 7 years, because 70 years were not respected the Shemitah. Okay,
490 years.
yeah, 490 years. Yes. So that is it's something that is really, yes, we can conclude about that. But at the end, the idea is that even I don't think that today in Israel is respecting the the Shemitah.
There's some who
Okay.
do.
Some they
Yeah.
do, but
Some,
it's not in the whole land of
no,
Israel.
not the whole lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, because yes, that is very, very hard. Okay. Uh, and honestly, to those who says, oh, I want to do what the Lord has commanded me, oh, I take off
I
my
have to.
hat. Yeah, because these are persons who have really, really great confidence in the Lord.
Right.
Okay, it's not easy. It's
No,
not easy. Probably yes. You administrate better the resources, and you can come to your mind different ways of how to storage properly the food. I don't know. God always provides ideas,
exactly.
but is a big challenge,
Yeah.
because it's your money. And probably today we don't have the Shemitah, and it's hard, for example, to me, but sometimes I every time that I go to the supermarket, for example, I can see how the prices are growing up, and also the gasoline is rising up, and
Yeah.
everything is rising up,
Yeah.
and your salaries are at the same level, and now you have oh God, how, what can I do right now? Okay, and gives you better ways to administrate. So sometimes uh, it's good to give time, but when it's time to give money, it's very hard. Okay, because oh, I can trust, I cannot trust, and I'm talking by myself, honestly. And so, but this is probably what God really wants, that we be different, because the money at the end, or the land at the end, is not for, honestly, for God, because God doesn't need money, God doesn't need resources, God doesn't need, I mean, honestly, he's the owner of everything.
Right.
The ones that we need God is us.
Yeah. Because when we can learn to truly trust him no matter what, that's when we have that, we fulfill that, the breach shalom. We have shalom.
Yes, yes,
No, and that's what he wants for us.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, but also it's interesting that part of your life if your money. So probably that's why Rav Shaul said the root of every evil is the love to money,
Yeah.
because is God competing to this God called money
Right.
against him.
Right.
Okay.
Golden calf.
Yeah. And yes, we love God, but it's it's that is why when you are a giver, not only to the congregation, I mean, to your parents, to your brothers, to your neighbors who are in needs, or person who needs help, um, then God blesses you, because it's like, oh, I can see who is his God. Okay, that's something that I wanted to add. And also, I love the way that the Rabbi, sometimes I fear about how to correct my kids. Okay, and this is part of also kedusha, how we behave with our families and relatives, and that is very sometimes a little bit hard, because um, when you, for example, to my son's friends, we are very strict parents. Okay.
Thank God.
And they said, oh, I fear your mom. Okay. And things like that. But we are not really we are not strict like a slave. No, we give them the opportunity to choose, uh, to make mistakes. Okay. But today's is like the rabbi said, I don't know, when I speak, I don't know what right I am destroying, because there are so many rights in the world today that you can lose. For example, I didn't know that that if I said, "Oh, this is a crazy man," for example, if I go to a government uh, company, and comes another person not properly dressed, and full of tattoos and things like that, and I look at that person, because it's like, oh, I don't know if that is an animal who is going to attack me. I don't know. And I look at him for more than 2 or 3 seconds. Okay.
What do
That
you?
could be, yeah, I am disrespecting his rights.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So things like that, and that is something that we need wisdom, and we need to stand up, okay, for today's, because yes, the persons, the problem is that not people, I will say this, people is right now saying Torah is not needed anymore. Okay, don't follow the Torah. Okay, and you are, how do you say that, fanatic if you follow the Torah. Okay, people start to live the Torah as his life, and then the results are worst. Okay, and that is because uh, people do not understand really what means to be a person of Shomer Torah, and it's hard for them to understand that. And when you try to teach your kids about that, then they start to call you in different ways, that probably you can feel bad, but at the end is that the words of the Creator, and the Creator love us. So that's why we need to follow. And that principles we need to share and instruct to our children. Even though the people around us believes that is something that is not valuable. But at the end, I can see, for example, kids that have been raised with principles and kids that has been left alone. And believe me, when they grow, they are completely different stories of lives.
Exactly.
So, uh, and I just remember something that I read when I was killed, that, and it's referring when you're studying, okay? It says the burden in of the studying at the university is very hard, but it's harder the burning of not studying when you are grown, something like that is. And I remember about that because sometimes I wanted to leave, for example, the university. Okay, I was working during my time of university, and I remember I didn't sleep, for example, but it come to my mind, no, but if I don't study, then this charge will be worse in the future. So I need to keep going, and help, honestly, these kind of things. And it's the very same, the principles. For example, when you are growing and you are teaching your kids, you are growing with them, and you are teaching the principle of Torah, just takes times, and takes your that, for example, instead to be resting watching something, okay, you are talking with them, and so for today's world is hard, but honestly, I can tell you the fruits of your time invested is very, very good. And that doesn't mean, for example, to destroy your kids. For example, I don't see, honestly, on the scriptures, on the Torah, that you need to destroy your kid. It tells you to instruct, to,
Right.
to teach. And that is more than just warning people, that is more than yelling people, that is more than shouting to your kids, and make them fear you. No, it is, or for example, like in Latin America, it's very common to use uh, different things that mothers had on their hands to throw at you when you were when you were kid. Okay, and it's not about that. When you are teaching, you need to sit.
Yeah.
You need to understand that you are under control, and keep inside of you your mouth quiet, because sometimes they are telling you stories that burns you inside. Okay, and then you have to have patience to teach. Remember, for example, uh, Sadok. Sadok has love and have justice. So in the same way, that is just to close. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's very important that when you tell your child something, and that there are like certain rules that you set up, and if they don't keep those rules, there are consequences, but you never keep your word, that they know there's no consequence, because that's really important. But sometimes we learn that too late in life, and then we suffer the consequences. That's why I'm so grateful for that, for the verse in the commandments that say, um, forgiving the guilt, forgiving those who know who. How does it go? Um, punishing only up to the third and fourth generation of those who reject God. But once we turn back to God, he will forgive us up to the 1,000th generation. So I know that my love for God now and my desire to serve him and to be honest with myself, to deal with these things in myself, then I can trust that whatever I didn't do with my children and my grandchildren, that God will help to take care of that, because that's the 1,000th generation. And I may not see it immediately. It may come in time, but it's very you can't, like Rabbi said, once they're older, it's like a tree that's planted crooked. You can't do anything about it then. And that's the most difficult part for me. Yeah, sometimes it has to be chopped down. And to watch our children go through being chopped is very hard. Oh my goodness. And that's something for young parents to learn in this generation. Do not follow Dr. Spock. Discipline. And it doesn't mean you can lose your temper and beat them to a pulp, like you said. But I know that there was one young mother who used to come to our congregation, and when she got upset with the kids, she told them, when we get home, you are going to be punished. And they were so nervous after that, but they were good the whole way. But she did continue. She punished them when they got home, but she explained why. I would be punished when I was a kid, but I never knew what I did wrong. And that was very difficult, because how do you fix something if you don't know what you're doing wrong? You know, I recently found out that someone was really upset with me and has been upset with me for a long, long time, but they never told me. And I still have no idea what I did. So, that's not teaching anything to anybody. But that's the beauty of the Torah, the Shomer Torah. That is who we are. And I had forgotten that when people ask, oh, what kind of congregation are you? We're Shomer Torah. And means we want to guard the Torah. Doesn't mean we won't fail. Doesn't mean we won't do things wrong. But that's what I love about the Shabbat, the idea of the seventh, the idea of the completion. Bye, Richard. Shabbat shalom to you.
Bye, Shabbat Shalom.
A good week. We're finishing now as well. But
Bella ronda.
all right. Good night. Bye, everybody. Have a wonderful day.
You
Shabbat
too.
shalom.
Bye,
Shabbat
team.
Shalom. Bye-bye.